In our 8th instructional filming video, the topic is interviews. Having great audio is obvious, and we'll certainly go over the steps to capture the best audio. But also, Austin will go over some techniques for the proper camera setup, lighting, and even framing to help your video interviews look more professional.
Alright, let's talk about interviews since Garrett's making us. So tripods are pretty common with interviews, but again, there's no right or wrong answer. First, find a spot where you like the background. We chose this spot because it had some good colors in it. Now if you're wondering what's wrong with Jason's face, you're right, there's a lot wrong. But he is squinting because the sun's too bright. And this actually happens a lot. So one simple fix is to move the person into the shade. Direct sunlight often makes skin too bright and creates bad shadows on the face, but shade provides smooth, even lighting. Okay, now make sure your camera is either eye level with the subject or slightly lower looking up at them. If you're using a tripod, make sure you level the tripod. And if you're going handheld, make sure you hold the camera steady and not crooked. Next, we need to make sure the camera is focused on their eyes. Finally, if you have headphones, plug them into your camera so you can hear any audio problems like distracting noises.
It was early season and the third day of the hunt.
It's tempting to stand right next to a cool background, but the truth is it can make your footage cluttered and claustrophobic.
And as they came in, he's the one that presented Jonathan the shot.
So it's a good idea to put some space between the person and the background. Finally, indoors can make your audio really echoey.
And walked probably 50 yards and found the animal. And for him to pick up that rack and with the velvet hanging off one side, it was an awesome experience.
If you want to improve the quality of your interviews, I highly suggest using a lav mic, regardless if it's indoors or outside. Here are some other tips to improve your interviews. If the person's not going to look directly into the camera, then put them off center or with the rule of thirds. Then have their body and eyes look into the opposite side of the screen, just off camera about here. Sometimes it's okay to look directly into the camera. Use your best judgment, but you'll typically do this if it's the host of the show.
It's mid-January here in the state of Kentucky. We have a few days left.
And if you're using manual audio settings, you'll want your talking volume to average around -12 decibels. If it maxes out at 0 decibels, it gets distorted, and there's nothing you can do to fix it.
It's late muzzleloader season here in the state of Kentucky.
Sure.
You good enough?
Yeah.
Are you recording right now?
Yeah.
I figured you were.
Of course I am.
Thanks, friend.
Something else that makes interviews look professional is blurring out the background. Here's a trick anyone can do, and it works with most cameras.
It allows me to build a very strong bow.
First, keep your hunter away from the background. Then back your camera off the hunter and zoom in most of the way. If you do this, you should use a tripod because the footage is going to be shaky. Here's a comparison of before and after. One of the most important interviews is filming a hunter with his recovered animal. To start out, it's a good idea to make the animal look better by doing things like wiping off excess blood and smoothing out fur. This buck was already dressed, so we angled the deer quartering towards the camera. Most of the time it's easier just to move the camera, unless the sun or the background's a problem, then you might need to move the animal instead. When you set up your camera, it's a good idea to set your camera height anywhere between hunter eye level and the ground. If you're shooting at night, you have to have a light, period. Next, make sure you frame up the shot how you want, but don't cut off anything important and try not to have too much wasted space. Now look in the viewfinder and clear away anything getting in the way of your shot. Finally, set your focus and audio levels and hit record.
65 degrees. You don't see that in December, so didn't think we'd have much luck. This deer came down and gave us a good broadside shot 45 minutes before dark.
When you're finished, get some B-roll shots of antlers or anything interesting, and try not to get the hunter's face so the shots can easily cut in with the other footage. If you film the recovery as it happens, the hunter's probably going to be more natural and not have a problem being in front of the camera. Plus, you're able to capture their raw excitement, unless they show no emotion like Garrett, but he doesn't count since he's a robot.
Well, this is definitely my best deer ever. And I'm actually kind of surprised he went down as fast as he did. The exit was really far back. He was quartering to a little bit more than I originally thought.
Also keep in mind, it can be hard for people to talk to the camera once the excitement wears off and everything becomes more formal.
I came in, saw 3 cubs, and fucking redo this because I don't like it.
So at this point, it's best to figure out what the hunter's going to talk about first, and also make sure they know to end strong. Alright, it's about 10 degrees out, so I'm going to try to go through this quick, but You know, you can go handheld or use a tripod for most interviews, but if you're filming the hosting of a show, you do want to use a tripod. Also, with recovery interviews, the rule of thirds doesn't always work well because when you have a person and an animal there, it gets weird. So again, look in the viewfinder and do what you think looks good because your instinct is probably right. Also, with recovery interviews, you don't have to use that low angle like I suggested, but it usually makes an animal look bigger and a lot of people like it. All right, up next we are looking at slow motion and time lapse, so stay tuned.